Welcome back to Taco Bowler Gaming, and welcome back to our tutorial series in Europa Universalis 4. Today we are playing as Poland, and I want to talk about scripted events, mainly 4 specific scripted events, as well as different kinds of subjects that you might encounter in your game. And Poland, I think, is a very good country to display a lot of those things. So I have done a lot of the things that I talk about in the previous episode as something that you want to do, except I haven't actually looked for allies. Brandenburg is a good ally. And let's see if anyone else wishes to be a friend. Bohemia does? Okay, so I will do this here. Well, 3 out of 4, we're going to leave it there. Now, I will mention that Poland has a subject. And right now it is Mazovia, which is this nation right here, as well as this land right here. So this introduces the subjects tab. There's not a ton that you can do for them without DLC. With DLC, there's a lot more you can do with a subject, but this is kind of a list of a type of subject that we have. And right now they are a vassal, and we'll get what that means is that they pay me 0.66 ducats per month. They pay 39.9% of their monthly tax to me, and they have a mechanic of Liberty Desire. Right now it is at 10%. You can see the breakdown of why. Basically, you want to keep that under 50% if at all possible. One way you do that is by improving relations with them. So you can go to the Relations menu, click Improve Relations, and it'll send a diplomat to them. And every month it goes up by 2, and it can be improved by up to 200. The maximum is at plus 200 or minus 200 for opinion, but the calculations go on forever. So right now I could get it to 277, even though it would only display and calculate for 200. But we're going to keep going until the scripted events fire. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to hope that 3, or at least 2 events fire in this video, and then I'll talk about 2 more. There are 4 main events that matter for Europe, and so that's kind of where we are. So we'll go as we're waiting for things to happen. I probably should, let's go ahead and say I'm gonna, be friends with Bohemia. Here is the first of those events happening right on time on December 1st, 1444. It happens roughly in this area. I think it's not exactly December 1st, but it happens within the first few months. This is an event that Poland gets. If you'll notice here in the court, Poland has what's called an interregnum. By the way, Bohemia, as I learned in my other series going on right now, also has an interregnum. Actually, nope, that's my menu still. They have, they also have an interregnum, but theirs is better. It's 222. Poland has a 000, but that's fine. Poland does get this event called the Successor of Vladislav III. And basically, the former king of Poland was slain on the battlefield in the Crusade of Varna against the Ottomans, and it split the union between Poland and Hungary, and it has left Poland in an interregnum. His brother, the Grand Duke of Lithuania, was asked by the Polish nobility to assume the throne, but found their conditions unacceptable. And in 1477, after 3 years of negotiations, Kimeritz was finally crowned. The Grand Duke of Lithuania was finally crowned King of Poland on its own terms and ruled both kingdoms as a union. So, you have 2 options, and Poland always has these options, and this event is important enough that no matter who you play in this area, if you can see Poland, it will tell you what this event does. The first option is we need a Jagilian, which makes Lithuania a junior partner, which is a different kind of subjects. And the elective monarchy in Poland event happens, it creates a new government type, which we won't get into in a tutorial. The other option is appoint a local noble instead. This would appoint just a random dynasty and with a different ruler, and that ruler is always good. It's a 5 or 6 in every category with a strong claim. It's very appealing. If you ever play Poland, you always need a Jagiellon. Gaining a personal union basically is gaining all of Lithuania here for free. And when Poland decides to gain all of Lithuania and their 23, I think, thousand troops for free, that's kind of a big deal. And that's why everyone cares about this particular event. The successor of Vladislav III is, what does Poland do? Are they the powerhouse of Poland-Lithuania, or do they remain divided and therefore conquerable? In order to do this, in order to have the subjects, we will do this. We don't really care about that. We'll pause again. So, we have a personal union. My king, we have formed a personal union with Lithuania. They have sworn complete allegiance to following our rule and our nations as one. Only good can come of this. So, we now have a king. Whoever was king in Lithuania, the 441 now becomes our king. And we rule over Lithuania. So you can see that Lithuania's troops show up here, 21,000 troops. And then Mazovia has their 5. And importantly, because I went up to the 4 out of 4 relations, now I suddenly have a new subject. So if you go to the subject tier, here is Lithuania. They, as a personal union, they do not pay me any income. Instead, they keep it all themselves, and they are therefore able to field a larger army. And their liberty desire is at 13%. It doesn't have the development problem that we have with here. And so I could raise my opinion with them as well. Always good to have your subjects' opinion raised with you. One of the things that does is it puts me over my relations limit. So, I could just go ahead and keep it at 5 out of 4, which is what I personally would do at this particular case. But if I really wanted that Diplo power, I could, say, end my guarantee of Moldavia, or I could break an alliance with a Brandenburg or a Bohemia. If you wanted to do that, you would just simply go here and you would revoke guarantee. Simple as that. Or you might offer an alliance, whatever you want to do. By the way, let's just click offer alliance just to show that it doesn't add anything, right? I'm guaranteeing them, and I have an alliance with them. Doesn't add any another relation. So, one of the other things that does is that it increases your force limit. Oh, I guess personal unions. Oh, personal unions apparently don't affect your force limit. That is a new one. I did not know that. So that is one of the scripted events. Is the successor of Vladislav III. It is a Polish event. So we'll continue to build our troops here to get up that thing. Moldavia, yeah, we accept a royal marriage with you. That's fine. So now we have our troops. Just like I said in the last video, royal marriage from Bohemia. Yeah, sure, that's fine. Just like I said in the last video, I want to get that mission completed as quickly as possible because it's harder to build up to force limit when you have a larger force limit later in the game. I am not going to worry about any of these, though, any of these other ones here. But you can notice there are some special missions. They have this little flag on them. So like owning Constantinople as the Ottomans was one of the special missions for them, for Poland. Instead of trustworthy allies and that whole middle line, you have a very different one here. Reincorporate Mazovia, and that would create an event, which I believe moves your capital to Warsaw, and then gives you some benefits, creating the Commonwealth on down. You can worry about that if you ever play as Poland. Now, something to note here is I am still making money at 1.01 ducats a month. However, I am not doing either of these advisors. So if I wanted to, I could try and take away some of these troops now that I've gotten my force limit modifier, or I might get rid of some cavalry and change those into infantry If I wanted to do that, by the way, you would click Reorganize Unit, and then you could either just move the cavalry over like that, or you could click this button to transfer all of the cavalry. Then if you select that unit, now I have the cavalry, I could just disband them. And they would go off of my count. You do want to have always at least one infantry per cavalry, otherwise you pay additional maintenance for the cavalry. We'll go over army maintenance or army composition in a later video on wars, but just want to mention that. I'm not going to worry about advisors right now. This game won't be played very long, so I'm just going to bring these guys on in and have it be just fine. Royal Marriage from Brandenburg, sure. Now, Royal Marriage does lower your legitimacy, but it typically doesn't matter that much. And I'm just waiting for the next event, which is likely going to be the Surrender of Maine. There is the Surrender of Maine. There we go. Oh, hey. That's an unusual start to it. So the Surrender of Maine is a interesting event. So before the start of the game, in real-life history, England and France were at war, and they have a tentative truce, and part of that truce was that England agreed to eventually surrender the province of Maine to France. So at the very beginning of the game, England controls Maine here, and they will get a event. I have seen it as early in my Bohemia campaign that I'm also uploading right now. It happened 3 days into the campaign. This is actually pretty late for it to happen in 1445. But this is an important event, and so everyone knows about it. Even though I'm playing Poland, I know about it. England will get an event called the Surrender of Maine, and they have a few options. They can return Maine to France, which is what they did this time, which was surprising. They can, or they can say, nope, we're not going to hand that back. That was a stupid thing that the king did before I took over. If they surrender Maine, then France just gets Maine, and as you can see here, a truce goes with England, and France gets prestige. If they don't surrender Maine, which is far more common, then France gets an event where they can choose to either go to war for Maine, or basically let it go, and then they lose their right to Maine. Normally, in a normal game, England will say no, and France will say, we're going to war. And so this pop-up will say, they have chosen, let us teach them how to war. And that creates a war where, importantly, England declares war on France. What that means is that all of the French allies, which in this case would be Brittany, Provence, and Genoa, which are not very strong, would get called into the war, and usually they accept. But England's allies of Leinster, Offaly, Navarra, and Portugal, especially if you have certain DLCs, do not get called into the war 9 times out of 10. So it winds up being England against all of those people I mentioned for France, and usually France wins and they'll take back this land. It's still possible that France, at the end of this truce, will attack England for that land, but that is kind of what it is. So I'm going to quickly explain these top things that I didn't get to in the last one, which while I wait for the next events to fire. Over here we have our treasury. You want that green plus to be there. That means you're making money. If it goes to the red minus, you're losing money, which isn't terrible, but isn't great. You want to deal with that as quickly as possible. The next one over is your manpower. You have a maximum manpower. So for me right now, that's 19,862. You get a certain amount of that each month. And so it would go up from what I currently have, which is 7,330, toward the maximum. If you get to the maximum, then you no longer gain anything. Over here is sailors. So if I had a coast, I would have sailors. It's the same as manpower, except it's for ships instead of for troops. Stability, it goes between -3 to +3, and we saw that on the stability tab over here. So if I wanted to click this and boost my stability, it goes up there. Corruption is here. We can talk about corruption more later on. Prestige is here. It's going down. I am not... Okay, so Prestige tries to sit at 0. So if it's under 0, it has a tendency to go up under that base value or decay. If it's well above 0, it tries to go down. You earn prestige by winning battles or getting certain things in wars, or there's sometimes events like, for instance, France got 10 prestige for England surrendering Maine. You want high prestige, but it's not the end of the world if you don't. Legitimacy is for monarchies. The next thing here, there's Republican tradition or something over there for the Empire of China that goes on there. But legitimacy in this case changes by 0.39. You want that to be as high as possible. What it does down there affects your country in various ways. You want it to be as high as possible, but as long as it's over like 40 or 50, it actually changes color down to red and yellow. As long as it's yellow or white, you should be okay. And then power projection is here. You don't, as a beginner, need to worry about that too badly either. The big thing you want to worry about as a beginner is to try and limit the number of things that you're focused on. And then as you improve in the game, you can focus on more and more and more things. All right, let's figure out what this is here. All right, so we have a new heir. So as a Catholic, we actually care about our possibility of getting a new heir. We have hit that 15% chance that happens every month, and we now have an heir as a 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. And so Teutonic Order has laid a claim on me, and Hungary has claimed something of mine, but I don't think they're going to go to war. I have all those allies. I have Lithuania. I can beat them. So I don't think that they're going to push those claims, but it is what it is. By the way, did Bohemia have a Jagiellian? No. Okay. So I might, if I really wanted to make sure my allies came in, I might improve relations with my allies. I might use that third diplomat if I were continuing in this game to maybe spy on something else to fulfill one of these missions, like, say, owning the West Prussia area. In order to find that, trying to find area, well, it should actually. So if I click this question mark, then it produces that purple outline. Poland needs to own those 4 things right there, so I might try and spy on Teutonic Order to get that there. I know that there's an event coming up, I think, in the base game that might give me that land, but if I were trying to do that, we would do that. So I don't think these next 2 are going to happen too quickly, so I'll just go over those and then we will end our... Oh, here we go. Here's one of the scripted events that I think they tell you if you're not playing Poland, but it's not nearly as consequential as Lithuania. So we have support of Roman of Moldavia. Something is happening in Moldavia. I've never played Moldavia to really know what that is. By the way, I right-click to get directly to the diplomacy screen on here. But something's happening there, and so we can fund his efforts. We can send soldiers, or we can not interfere. You can see what happens with that. Do I want to spend 76 ducats or manpower? And then that will give Moldavia an event called Roman's Invasion, and basically they can choose to be independent, or they can choose to become a march under me or a march under Hungary. And I don't know how to cheese this event, but it is what it is here. So they have sought support from Hungary. So they are now a march under Hungary, which is not very much fun, but oh well. So I'm not going to be able to show you what a march does with that group, so let's see if there's someone I can maybe release to... Yeah, okay. So I will release a vassal. So that's how that happens. I click that button and then I just release them. And so now I have another vassal, which helps. By the way, Liberty Desire for vassals is calculated based upon the relative power of all vassals. So let me quickly... well, you can see what happens here. So, because I have been improving relations with Moldavia, and they're at like 172, their liberty desire is 1%. But Galicia Bohemia here just released, their opinion of me is 30, so their liberty desire is much higher because it's not being brought down by their opinion of me. Even though they're a very similar development, there's only one developmental difference. That opinion is massive for subjects. But another way that you can get it down, I'll go ahead and bring this back so I can compare them. That was the point of this video. Is to... why can I not designate them a march? Can I designate you a march? I wonder if that's a thing with... I wonder if that's a DLC. I'm unsure why I cannot designate them a march. I want to designate one a march. Well, sometimes they might... Oh, it's calculated up. But still, you can see the massive difference that opinion makes. But you can also see I've released a new vassal that increases their strength. And that, matters quite a lot in liberty desire, right? So you want to make sure that you've balanced that out. I wanted to make them a march. Oh well. Basically, a march is a vassal that cannot be annexed and does not pay you any taxes. So we will talk about annexation in a moment. But the march also loses, I think, 15 liberty desire as a base just benefit of being a march, and also has increased defensiveness in wars and increased land force limit and things like that. But they don't pay me taxes, right? So Galicia Bohemia is paying me right now 0.73. Moldavia is paying me 0.67. I would lose that, but they would lose liberty desire, things like that. Apparently it's a DLC only thing. So right now I have lost some income because I was getting 100% of the tax from these provinces. Now I am only getting, 39.3% of the tax from those provinces. But they will fund the army for me. I don't have to pay for their army. So there's a trade-off. If you are conquering a bunch of territory and you don't have that territory stated, let's say I was conquering over here eventually and I didn't state that territory, taking Crimea as a vassal might actually be beneficial, because instead I would only get a certain portion of that taxes anyway, so maybe I could actually get more by having them as a vassal. You just have to worry about the strength of the vassals and things like that. So actually, they would probably become disloyal if they built any army at all and increased their relative strength of all vassals to Poland. Importantly, however, not included in that calculation is Lithuania, because they are a personal union. So not only is Lithuania not included in the calculation of relative power of all vassals and marches, if I had any marches, they also are not calculating Moldavia and Galicia Bohemia into their calculation. So even though their relative power is over mine, it's only 5% liberty desire after everything is taken into consideration. So personal unions are great. This is one I got by event, but you can get them with anyone who shares your dynasty, and this is here for Christians. This is a Christian mechanic only, personal unions. And so all of these people don't have an heir. So if I were to get a royal marriage with any of them and they had my dynasty, I might be able to claim their throne, or just simply put, I might just be able to get on it. So let's go to the diplomacy matter here. They have no legal heir. So right now, if they died, there would be a war between Portugal and France. Portugal would gain England as a personal union, and France would be able to challenge that as the largest rival. You don't need to worry about how to make personal unions. You don't need to worry about trying to form them here. But my first game, I played as Castile and actually had this type of thing fire. I was royal married to France, and Suddenly I got a notification that I was at war with England and France was my personal union, and I had no idea what had just happened or why it was or what was going on. So that can happen. Just know that is there. Some major personal unions that you will see: Denmark has as their personal union both Sweden and Norway, and then they have a vassal in Holstein down here that they usually annex as soon as they can within 10 years. So let's go ahead and talk about annexation of a vassal. So you cannot annex a march. So Hungary would have to revoke the march status of Moldavia before they could integrate them. But having a march can be nice. But Mazovia here, once they have been a vassal for 10 years, then it's possible to annex them. You have to have an opinion. Their opinion of you has to be at plus 190. And then you annex them based upon the cost it would take to core them, except it's using diplomatic power instead of administrative power. And it goes by so many per month based upon something called your diplomatic reputation. You don't have to worry about how you find your diplomatic reputation or how to worry about that. Here is where the diplomatic reputation is. You don't have to worry about how to get that. When you go to annex a vassal, it will show up when you click this button. I'm not going to play it through to 1454 to make that happen in this particular video. But if you keep watching other videos of mine, as well as later in this tutorial, I might get to a point where I am annexing somebody, and we can kind of display that then. I do want to talk about two other big events that matter in early Europe. One of them will be that the Ottomans will normally go to war for Constantinople. And then you will get an event when they win that war called the Fall of Constantinople. And that just tells you that the Ottomans have taken Byzantium and they are going to be a big power. Now, 99 times out of 100, when you're not messing with it, that is what happens. The Ottomans will declare war on Byzantium, Byzantium will fall, and the Ottomans will take control of that province, that big development province, and it will be very important for them. However, in that 1 out of 100 times Byzantium wins the war for whatever reason, then the Ottomans sometimes then don't become a threat for the entire game, and you have a very different game on your hands. There is a strategy where people who have a navy sometimes declare war on Byzantium first. Right, the Ottomans have to get a claim, but in theory you could declare war without that claim. Right, I could declare war right now, and it would just give me aggressive expansion. It would give me some penalties, but I could do it. And then if I could get my troops down here, I could vassalize. I could win the war, vassalize Byzantium, and then when the Ottomans declare war on them, I could call in all of my allies and beat up the Ottomans and take them out early. It's a strategy that's pretty common for some people who don't want to deal with the Ottomans later in their game. It's just something to worry about, and that event, the Fall of Constantinople, will be a notification, just like the Surrender of Maine was. The other big event that happens every game for Europe, there's some smaller events like that Moldavia event. There will be an event up here where a vassal up here declares independence and asks for Poland for help, promising to be a vassal, and that's something you care about if you're playing over here, but you don't really care about if you're playing elsewhere. The four events I'm talking about: the Surrender of Maine, the Succession of Vladislav, the Fall of Constantinople, and then this fourth one you care about no matter where you are. The fourth one doesn't always happen at the beginning of the game, but has to happen, I think, before 1515 if it's going to happen at all. Well, I guess it's also the inherit. We'll worry about that one when we talk about the HRE. But this one is the Iberian Wedding. So Castile and Aragon are normally rivals. Sometimes they're allies, but they're normally rivals in the game. And in this case, they do appear to be rivals. You can see that Castile has rivaled Aragon. But what happened in real life is that Castile and Aragon, their rulers, one of them had, I think Castile had a female ruler, Aragon had a male ruler, and they got married. And they joined their dynasty into one. So the same way that Poland gets Lithuania as a personal union, Castile gets the same kind of event if that is a case. If one of them has a male ruler and the other one has a female ruler, then they get an event called, usually it's Castile or the player. If you are playing as Aragon, you get the event. But they get an event called the Iberian Wedding, and they have the same sort of deal. Either we can bind the dynasty together. I can bind my dynasty to theirs. And in that case, Castile gets a personal union over Aragon unless the player is Aragon, in which case Aragon would get a personal union over Castile. Or they can choose to appoint a local noble, at which point then they don't get the personal union. And so you care, right? These are two big nations. You care if they go together, the same way that Poland and Lithuania, you care if they become one. And actually, Aragon has a personal union over Naples. So if they haven't lost that, which they do about half the time, then it becomes Castile, Aragon, and Naples all in one. That's a big, big nation all of a sudden, so you care about that. And that usually happens somewhere between 1460 and 1490 as the game goes on. So that is the scripted events, the major scripted events that happen in Europe, as well as a tutorial on vassals and personal unions and marches. I hope you have learned something here and you are enjoying this series. There should be soon a playlist and a link to that playlist that shows up on your screen. But I have been Thic Borders, and I will see you next time.